Hey everyone, welcome to this week's recap podcast for SNXweave. If you're a new listener, we'll be giving quick weekly recaps of news and important updates from the previous week from the Spartan Council and core contributors, as well as discussing what the Grants DAO and Ambassador DAO are up to. We've got a lot of interesting content for you today, so let's get started. First and foremost, another election is upon us. SNXweave will once again be broadcasting Spartan Council panels on our podcast to hear from the Spartan Council incumbents and candidates and discuss questions posed by the community. If you plan to run for Spartan Council this epic and would like to participate in the panel, please have your nomination in before this Friday, December 10th, and tag Proof of Cake in the Spartan Council nominations channel in the Synthetics Discord. We're all looking forward to another exciting election period. In case you missed it, the LUSD SUSD wrapper has been added to L1, along with some parameter changes. This introduced an LUSD wrapper that mints SUSD for each LUSD deposited with no fee. The burn fee on ETH has also been lowered to 0 and the cap decreased, thereby incentivizing an unwind of the SETH wrapper. SCCP 153 was also implemented, raising the cap on atomic swaps per block to 1 million SUSD. The cap will be raised even further in the near future to accommodate for larger trades without fee reclamation delay. The HRA release also went out a few days ago, on which SIP 192 was implemented to fix the error where fees from the wrapper factory are double counted. This led to stakers claiming a higher amount than they should have been able to, resulting in a loss of funds in the fee payment address. Stakers are not able to claim when the fee address lacks the necessary funds. Therefore, this SIP repaid the missing funds, roughly $257,000, back to the Synthetics fee address on L2 in order to make up for the shortfall in fees and allow stakers to continue claiming for the rest of the fee period. Last week we had two SIP presentations, SIP 188 to add an SETH BTC synth, and SIP 180 for ALAN protocol. SIP 188, presented by Afif, will list a synth that tracks and mirrors the ETH-BTC price ratio on L1. ETH-BTC is one of the most traded pairs in crypto markets, so this synth gives users one-click exposure to pseudo-delta neutral exposure to ETH's upside. The only difference in functionality of this synth will be that it trades at the ratio of prices for multiple Chainlink feeds, ETH-USD and BTC-USD. Or inverse of BETH ETC. Fief explained that one possible risk to be aware of is if we ever had an inverse of this synth, so BTC ETH, you would theoretically be able to buy the two of them together and make risk-free profit from the protocol. For this reason, there will not be an inverse to this synth. Caleb asked if it's worth exploring adding this synth to Atomic. Fief said we probably would be able to, since the wrapped BTC wrapped ETH pool on Uniswap is pretty liquid. But he added that it might not be worth it if the risk is too big or if we wouldn't be able to have enough volume on it in Atomics. Caleb also asked what the fee will be on this synth, since ETH is 25 basis points and BTC is 30. Fief said they were thinking of making it the higher of the two, so 30 basis points. This SIP was voted on and approved with 7 council members voting in favor and none against. Next, SIP 180, presented by Alex, Ape, and Kane, proposes the creation of ALAN protocol. As a reminder, ALAN is an open and permissionless set of factory contracts that enables anyone to instantiate a pool of capital that can be used to source deals within the Ethereum ecosystem. The community got to hear a lot about ALAN from Alex and Kane a couple of weeks ago during the Spartan City Hall that the ADAO hosted with them. They really dove into some important technical aspects of ALAN and answered some great questions during the City Hall. Definitely be sure to check out the recording if you missed it, or check out our blog post from last week for a summarized recap of the City Hall. ALAN is a new decentralized deal coordination protocol that will leverage the established decentralized governance framework of Synthetics to launch this new protocol in a fair and transparent manner. Alex explained that 30% of the initial supply of ALAN tokens will be released initially. Of this 30%, half, so 15%, will be airdropped to SNX stakers on L1 and L2 as a sign of appreciation for the effort that has gone into Synthetics governance, enabling ALAN to launch via this SIP. The other 15% will be split into thirds. 5% will go to the ALAN DAO to keep everything running, 5% will go to the initial ALAN launch pool, and the remaining 5% will be for DeFi mega pool farming. The other 70% of ALAN tokens will be distributed over a 4-year period, and Alex says there will be a staking rewards contract shortly after launching ALAN. As for the ALAN Council, there will be 5 seats who will initially be voted in by SNX stakers. The duties of the initial council will be to hold the funds for the protocol, set the direction for V2, host meetings for the community, propagate educational resources, manage and pay core contributors, help set up the initial AELIP governance proposal structures, and more. Alex and Kane emphasize that these are the early stewards of the protocol who will push ALAN towards V2, which will have a much more robust governance mechanism and maybe even different DAOs to serve different purposes. The initial stipend for council members will be 0.2 ALAN per month. This SIP was also voted on and approved with 6 council members voting in favor and none against. And as a reminder to SNX holders, there is a separate snapshot space open for you to use your SNX to vote for the first ALAN Council, so get your votes in. In Grants DAO news, the Retroactive Public Goods Initiative went live last week. As a reminder, the Grants Council partnered with Gitcoin to put forth a private grants funding round that will go towards public goods projects that have benefited the larger DeFi community. Feel free to check out their Medium page or last week's Weave recap for a more in-depth explanation of the eligibility criteria. There will be a Twitter space happening this week with the Grants Council and Gitcoin to discuss this initiative, so tune in on Wednesday. The main Synthetics Twitter account will also be doing a tweet thread to promote the RPGG project. As for the upcoming NFT project, the council is hoping to have another AMA-type online chat with the ambassadors, Optimism, and the Universe XYZ guys to talk about NFTs on Optimism and get everyone excited. Be sure to stay tuned for the date to hear some tidbits and Easter eggs about the NFT project. Rubber Duck says they just need to reconnect with Universe to see how far they are from a final set of designs, then the ball is pretty much in their court to deploy their products on Optimism. Version 1.5 of the GDAO site is still being worked on by developer Karita. This version will feature a multiple input field feature for submitting grants, as well as a page that integrates and differentiates between grants and initiatives. Clem and CT will be syncing up with Karita this week to get an update on the site and make sure it can be delivered, hopefully by the end of the year. Lastly, the Grants Council has gotten to the bottom of the issues some people are having with failed transactions when using the Flash Loan tool. It appears they're failing for those with 0 transferable SNX in their wallet. The Flash Loan tool basically lets you sell off some of your SNX for SUSD so you can pay off some of your debt and eventually get unstaked. If all of your SNX is staked and 0 SNX is transferable, however, then there is 0 SNX that can be sold. You can only take a Flash Loan against transferable SNX. Rubber Duck will be writing a disclaimer for the page that says you need to have some transferable SNX for this to work. In Ambassador news, Millie has submitted an SCCP to modify the Ambassador Council mandate for the upcoming election. The most notable change will raise the council seats to 4, while allowing for a 3 of 4 Gnosis-safe multisig. The new mandate also reinstates the need for a technical role on the Ambassador Council. Previously, in SIP 157, there was a clause that excluded any expectation of technical skills related to smart contracts. However, as the Ambassador Council has matured with initiatives such as the Governance Participation Program, it has become apparent that a technical role within the Council is in fact necessary. Pending Spartan Council approval, the ambassadors are hoping that this SCCP gets implemented in time for the upcoming Epic. In case you missed it, the Ambassador Council hosted a Spartan City Hall last week with Optimism. We got to hear co-founders Kevin and Ben answer several of the community's questions, as well as discuss the recent Regenesis and the future of Optimism. Ben gave us a rundown of what exactly EVM equivalence entails, explaining that it means the system is fully compliant with Ethereum in a way that is very different. He continued saying they realized that they needed something that was exactly the same as Ethereum, because Ethereum on L1 is constantly improving. Kevin added that they worked closely with a lot of projects to get them integrated on OVM before the EVM equivalence, so it's really nice to see all of them now having one-click deploys. Andy asked if this was Optimism's last regenesis, or if there will be more in the future, to which they replied saying there will likely be upgrades in the future, but they're working hard to put regeneses in the past since they're a difficult process. Millie asked them to elaborate a little more on EVM equivalence and how it compares to other L1 chains. Ben explained that several other layer 1s do already have EVM equivalents, but most are more centralized. In Optimism's case, he explained that everything they build has to have security that can be routed through Ethereum. The core difference that makes this EVM equivalence unique for layer 2s is the way they were able to tie in the security of layer 1 and apply it to the layer 2 system. Next, Andy asked if they had an estimate for when the whitelisting will cease to exist. First off, Ben wanted to reiterate that even though they still have a whitelist, it's extremely easy to get through it, and there have been a ton of projects that have launched since their EVM equivalents. Kevin echoed this, saying basically if you fill out the typeform information correctly, you're almost guaranteed to get whitelisted within a week, whether you're a small or large project. He added, however, that they have done a lot of de-risking on arbitrary contract deployment, and while they're not making any promises, there's a possibility that whitelisting will be removed by the end of the year. But regardless, they would like to remove the FUD that it's difficult to deploy on Optimism because of whitelisting. Millie then asked them to clarify the centralization aspect of Optimism. Ben said that if you're on L2, there's a critical centralization factor, and no matter what, that is going to compromise the security in some sense. He added that the trade-off you make is that users don't get all of the security up front, but upfront comes sooner. This is a reason why they don't have fraud proofs yet, but this is likely going to be a key integration in the next upgrade. Millie also asked the guests where they see Optimism in the long run. Kevin said that once the whitelist is lifted, since they will be at EVM equivalents and one-to-one with Geth, Optimism will inherit all of the stability of Geth. This means they will be able to scale up to millions of transactions per day, which is a very critical inflection point for several major applications. Ben also touched on EIP 4488, saying it basically proposes a way to make call data cheaper while capping the blocks at a maximum size. This will most likely allow for cheaper transaction costs for rollups and a 5x reduction in call data costs. If you missed the City Hall and would like to hear all of the points discussed more in depth, be sure to check out the recording linked in our blog post. Kevin and Ben were great guests, and we learned a lot. The ambassadors will be hosting another Spartan City Hall this week on Tuesday at 2200 UTC with D-Hedge, so be sure to join the community governance stage to tune in. Lastly, as another reminder, the nomination period for all DAO positions is open for another week. To be on the ballot for the Spartan, Treasury, Grants, or Ambassador Council, you must have your nomination in before the end of the day UTC time, Tuesday, December 14th. Voting will begin immediately following the end of the nomination period and will go through the end of the day UTC time, Tuesday, December 21st. And of course, don't forget that if you are running for Spartan Council and would like to participate in the panel, you must have your nomination in before this Friday. Your participation in governance is what keeps the Synthetics ecosystem flowing. Let's make this a great election. And that's it for today's updates. Be sure to check out our weekly recap blog post, share this podcast link, and let us know what you think and what you'd like to hear more about from SNXweave. Thanks for listening.